Voices there from the favela. So, where do these very real social problems leave Brazil's ambition to be seen as a major emerging power, with a permanent place on the UN Security Council? Well, I've been talking to the Brazilian Foreign Minister, Celso Amorim, about Brazil's role in the world on the world stage and its hopes of keeping on good terms with both Washington and some of its harshest critics in Iran and Venezuela. I asked him why he's so sure that now is the time for Brazil to emerge as a major power.
There are two basic things. The world has changed and Brazil has changed. Brazil has deepened its democracy. It was able to elect metal workers as president. We improved social justice in Brazil, which was always a big flaw in our system. So Brazil has changed, became more self-confident. And internationally, of course, the world has changed. And I think one thing that foreign policy in Brazil did to help in this situation was to perceive these changes in the world. So when nowadays you read that the BRICS is what matters, the trade among developing countries is what matters, well, we started to practice that even before.
But what specifically does Brazil offer that traditional power brokers in the world do not offer?
It's a big country, a big economy, as others maybe, but also it's a country internally peaceful. I mean, you don't have very big social strife. You have social problems in Brazil, of course, and some of them sometimes may even become violent, but you have nothing compared with the civil wars, with terrorist threats, things like that. On the other hand, we have been able also, and that's not only our merit, it's also the merit of the others, we have been able to have peace in our region. We haven't been in a war for 140 years, except the Second World War. And which other country with 10 neighbors can claim not to have had a war in almost 1.5 centuries?
Let me ask you about soft power. It's a phrase often used and I think very little understood. Hard power is the use of military force. What exactly is soft power?
Well, soft power is the use of the attraction that represents your culture, your civilization, but also the way you approach international relations. I mean, we don't approach international relations with threats. We try to solve our questions with dialogue, and we have seen that, for instance, in relation to Bolivia, Paraguay, other situations in South America. Very often, Lula's government was criticized by the opposition to say, well, you're being too soft. Well, all the problems that existed were solved in a way which is more typical of Brazilians maybe than some others.
How do you manage to remain on good terms with President Chavez in Venezuela, President Ahmadinejad in Iran, the US administration, China, many countries who are not friends with each other, but Brazil claims to be friends with them all?
This is precisely part of what you could call our soft power, is this ability to talk, to try to understand the other. It's a trait of Brazilian character that helps us understanding others. We prefer conciliation to fight.
Okay, let's look at the Iran nuclear issue. Hillary Clinton was here very recently, hoping to persuade Brazil to join the US in seeking stronger sanctions against Iran at the United Nations. She failed. Why does Brazil not join the US in putting more pressure on Iran?
I personally was ambassador to the United Nations when I saw this idea of strengthening sanctions against Iraq coming, and it's always more sanctions, and then the sanctions didn't work, then you had to be even stronger, and of course it finished as we all know it did, with no benefit for the world, in my opinion. And I think this is the way, and I think honestly that there is a chance, because for the first time in the last proposal by the Atomic Agency, there are the elements which make an agreement possible. Well, you may say, well, why didn't Iran accept it? But I think they didn't reject the main concept. And I think if there is still a will to negotiate around the concepts of the latest proposal, I think it would be possible to come to a conclusion. That would not solve all the problems, but would be a good start.
Do you agree, though, with the Americans on the basic principle that it is important to ensure that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapons capability?
We are members of an NPT. We have inscribed in our constitution, which very few countries did, the principle that we would not develop nuclear capability except for peaceful purposes. The best insurance is to have the AEA inspectors there. What you don't want to have is a situation in which you break up the relations and then really it becomes impossible.
For many decades, Brazil has been described as tomorrow's nation.
And tomorrow never came in the past.
You finished my question.
I think if you look at Brazil now and look the place we occupy in the world, of course, a lot has to do also with the personality of President Lula, who has a lot of charisma. Lula is absolutely himself.
But you're about to lose him at the end of this year.
Yeah, but you know, I have a good answer for that as well. Pelé was only one, but Brazil continued to be world champion.